Imagine this. Before you were born, before your name, your face, your childhood, your heartbreaks, your victories, something happened. Not in a hospital, not in a womb, but somewhere deeper, somewhere older, somewhere beyond. You sat across from others. Some you would love, some you would lose, some who would break you, and others who would stitch you back together. And together, in silence and in light, you made an agreement. You said yes to things you wouldn't remember. You chose lessons you didn't yet understand. You wrote a script you would later swear you never agreed to. And then, you forgot. That's the soul contract. It's not written on paper. It's etched into frequency, hidden beneath the skin of your experiences, coded into the people you meet, the pain you carry, and the timing of everything that ever mattered. What if your hardest heartbreak was planned? What if your deepest wound was agreed upon? What if the person who hurt you most was honoring an ancient promise, not out of cruelty, but out of role? And here's the unsettling part. What if you agreed to hurt them too? You see, when you start pulling the threads of this idea, the whole fabric of why begins to unravel. Why me? Why now? Why this? The answers don't come from logic. They echo from a place you can't touch, but you can feel it when it stirs. You've felt it before. That strange knowing that some people were meant to find you. That déjà vu in a place you've never been. That moment of pain that felt too precise to be accidental. And in this video, we'll walk straight into that mystery. We'll ask what a soul contract really is, why some people seem destined to enter your story, why you may feel bound to cycles you didn't choose, and most importantly, if you can break them. The answer may not be what you expect, but by the end of this, you might never look at your own life the same way again. If part of you already suspects that nothing in your life has been random, you'll want to stay. And if this opening already triggered something deep, like comment your first gut reaction and subscribe, because the real contract might be the one you're about to remember. The soul contract is not a new idea, but it's one we've forgotten, buried under centuries of logic, dogma, and the illusion of control. Ancient cultures didn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They asked, "What did I agree to before this moment arrived?" In Hindu philosophy, there is karma, not as punishment, but as alignment. In Sufism, there's the idea of divine orchestration, where even heartbreak is holy. In the mystery schools of Egypt, initiates were taught, you chose this path before your breath was born. And the soul contract? It's the thread beneath it all. But here's where it becomes strange, almost uncomfortable. Your soul, before incarnation, doesn't think like your mind. It doesn't prioritize comfort, success, or safety. It prioritizes growth. You chose people who would betray you, not because you deserved pain, but because betrayal would awaken a strength in you nothing else could. You chose limitation, not because you wanted to suffer, but because limitation would sharpen your creative force. You chose family lines full of silence, shame, or shadow, not to be cursed, but to be the one who finally breaks the pattern. The soul contract isn't always fair. It's precise. It gives you the conditions that will shape your evolution. Not always the ones your ego wants, but always the ones your spirit needs. And here's the real paradox. Sometimes the people who cause you the most pain are the ones who love your soul the most, because at that higher level of awareness, they didn't agree to hurt you out of cruelty. They agreed to play a role that would crack your illusion. That's why the contract is hard to see, because it's not written in ink. It's written in wounds, and healing is remembering. You've felt it, even if you've never had the words for it. A relationship that burns too bright, too fast, leaves a scar you can't explain. A teacher who shows up exactly when you need them, then disappears without a goodbye. A stranger whose eyes feel like a story you forgot. A city that calls to you without reason. A trauma that echoes louder than it should. These aren't accidents, they're activations. Soul contracts don't always show up with clarity. They show up as intensity. They pull you into a lesson you can't avoid. They wake something ancient in you, some forgotten thread of knowing, of memory, of, I've been here before. You might meet someone and feel an instant bond, but the relationship is volatile, karmic, exhausting. You might walk away asking, what was that? That was a contract. not one of romance, one of transformation, because contracts aren't about staying, they're about awakening, and the ones who shake you the most are the ones keeping their promise. The soul doesn't seek easy, it seeks evolution. That's why your greatest heartbreak might have been the first step to your freedom. That's why the parent who couldn't love you might have shaped the resilience that would carry your whole life forward. And the friend who betrayed you might have pushed you into the solitude that made you finally hear your own voice. None of this makes it okay, but it might make it make sense. You're not being punished, you're being reshaped. And when the contract completes, you'll feel it. Something lets go, a pattern breaks, a loop ends, a chapter closes without resistance, and you'll know you honored the agreement. If your life is shaped by a contract you made before birth, do you still have free will? If your soul mapped out who you'd love, who you'd lose, and what you'd endure, what then is left for you to choose? This is the paradox, and the answer is more complex than either fate or freedom. Think of your soul contract as a script. It contains key scenes, turning points, major lessons, soul encounters. But how you play those scenes, that's entirely up to you. Two people can experience the same betrayal. One becomes bitter, the other becomes boundless. Same contract, different response. Because the agreement is not about outcome, it's about opportunity. It's not that your choices don't matter, it's that your choices determine how deeply the contract can activate your growth. You might meet someone you planned to find, but whether you open your heart or repeat the past, that's your decision. You might face a life-altering loss, but whether it breaks you or breaks you open, that's your sovereignty. And here's the deeper truth. The soul doesn't want control. It wants clarity. It wants you to remember that even within a structure, you're the one bringing it to life. That's why the soul contract isn't a prison. It's a path. And within that path, every breath is still yours. Even the choice to break the contract is part of the contract. We'll talk more about that soon. But for now, pause. Ask yourself, am I playing out an old role, or am I choosing something new? That question alone can crack open the whole agreement. And if something in this moment just hit deeper than words, like comment what you're feeling right now, and subscribe if you're ready to walk this path with more awareness than ever before. Because the next part of this story is the one where you remember how much power you've always had. Pain isn't the punishment, it's the portal. We're taught to fear it, escape it, numb it, deny it. But within the framework of a soul contract, pain is sacred. Not because it feels good, but because it reveals what comfort never could. You don't meet your deepest self through ease. You meet it when the mask cracks, when the job ends, when the person leaves, when the future dies, and something in you is forced to awaken from the script you thought was safe. The soul doesn't crave suffering, but it understands something the ego doesn't. That evolution requires disassembly. The betrayal you didn't see coming. It didn't just break your trust. It broke the version of you that accepted less than you deserved. The illness that paused your entire life. It might have slowed you down long enough to remember why you were here in the first place. The trauma that echoed through your lineage, it's not just yours. And by choosing to heal it, consciously, you might be closing a karmic loop that no one before you had the strength to face. Pain is never random in a soul contract. It's precise, tailored, and here's what most never realize. Your greatest pain often hides your greatest gift. The teacher is disguised, the mirror is shattered, but the reflection still shows you the truth, that you are not your story. You are the one who came to rewrite it, not with blame, but with fire. Because the contract doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for presence, to stay, to feel, to face. And in that space, the transformation begins. Can you break a soul contract? Can you step away from a lesson before it's finished? Can you walk out of a loop your soul chose before it unravels you? The answer is both terrifying and freeing. Yes, but not without consequence. Soul contracts aren't eternal prisons. They are sacred invitations, and every invitation can be declined. But declining a soul contract isn't as simple as saying, "I'm done," because the contract lives in your frequency, not your words. It repeats because you still resonate. It persists because you haven't integrated the teaching. Breaking it requires more than resistance. It requires recognition. You don't break a soul contract by escaping it. You break it by embodying the lesson it came to teach, so deeply, so fully, that the pattern no longer serves a purpose. That's when the energy collapses. That's when the loop dissolves. Sometimes that looks like forgiveness. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's walking away from a dynamic that your soul has danced with for lifetimes. But here's the truth no one tells you. Breaking a contract doesn't mean abandoning your path. It means upgrading it. It means saying, I've learned enough from this pain. I don't need to repeat it. And the universe? It listens. Because the contract was never meant to trap you. It was meant to wake you. And once you're awake, you don't need the alarm anymore. So yes, you can break it. But the real question is, have you honored it first? Because only through honoring do you earn the freedom to let it go. How do you know a soul contract is ending? There's no email, no voice from the sky, no divine announcement that says, you're free now. But the signs are always there, subtle at first, then loud, then undeniable. It starts with a shift in energy. What once felt magnetic now feels heavy. What once pulled you in now pushes you away. The person, the place, the pattern. It begins to feel like a costume that no longer fits. You try to stay out of loyalty, comfort, or fear, but your body knows. Your nervous system whispers, this story is done. You feel it in strange ways. A conversation that no longer lands. A job that once defined you, now drains you. A relationship that used to ignite you, now suffocates your breath. Sometimes grief shows up, not for what you've lost, but for what you're outgrowing. Because when a contract nears completion, you're not just letting go of a person or pattern. You're letting go of the version of you that needed them. And that part of you, even if it was built in pain, had purpose. That's why endings are hard. Not because we want to stay stuck, but because it's hard to say goodbye to who we were, even when we're becoming something truer. You might feel restless, disoriented, like you're floating between timelines, one foot in the old, the other not yet grounded in the new. This in-between is sacred. Don't rush it. Don't numb it. Just watch. Because the clearest sign a soul contract is ending is when you begin to see it. The pattern, the lesson, the mirror. You see it clearly, finally, without blame, without story. And in that moment, something unhooks. The frequency collapses. And you know, not mentally, but in your bones. This chapter is done. Now comes the choice. Will you step out with love, or stay out of habit? Because one ends the contract, the other renews it. What if some souls are meant to find you again, and again, and again? Not because of coincidence, or karma, or fate, but because of contract. Before you incarnated, you didn't just agree to lessons. You agreed to companions, some for a season, some for a storm, and some for lifetimes. These are the soul companions, the ones you don't recognize with your mind, but with your frequency. They show up in different forms, different faces, different names, but the connection feels the same, immediate, undeniable, ancient. You might meet them and feel like you've known them forever, or that you have something to finish, something to clear, or something to begin again. These soul contracts aren't always soft. Sometimes they're explosive. That lover who wrecked your peace but cracked open your art, that friend who walked away but left you stronger than ever, that mentor who arrived just before your life unraveled and said the one sentence that still echoes in your choices. These aren't just characters, they're catalysts, and you chose each other, consciously. In the space between lifetimes you said, I'll find you, we'll dance again. Even if we forget, we'll remember when it matters. And in this remembering, in that sharp emotional jolt of connection or heartbreak, the contract activates. Some are here to stay, others are just passing through. And a few? They show up only to finish what couldn't be finished before. And the beauty is, you don't have to understand it with your mind. Your soul already knows. So next time someone enters your life and it feels too intense, too deep, too fast, don't dismiss it. Sit with it. Ask, what did we agree to bring each other this time? The answer might not come in words, but the moment you ask, the memory begins to return. And in that return, you'll begin to see, this life is not your first script together. Sometimes it's not the same person, but the same pattern. You leave the relationship, but find the same dynamic in someone new. You leave the job, but the burnout follows. You walk away from the drama, but somehow, it finds you again. This isn't bad luck. This is a contract, still alive. You didn't break it. You just changed the costume. And until the lesson is fully integrated, until you've seen the mirror, not the mask, the energy repeats. Because soul contracts don't need permission to loop. They loop by resonance. Your subconscious keeps calling in the same vibration, hoping this time you'll finally see it. Not to punish you, to free you. Each repetition is a second chance, a new moment to choose differently, to speak up instead of staying silent, to walk away instead of people-pleasing, to love yourself instead of proving yourself. The universe doesn't care how long it takes. It only cares that you awaken. And the longer you resist the teaching, the more intense the contract becomes. It will scream through your body. It will echo through your relationships. It will burn through your timelines. Not because you're failing, but because your soul is persistent. It wants you to remember, not what happened, but who you are beneath what happened. You don't need to analyze every person. You need to ask, what is the emotion that keeps repeating? What is the belief underneath that emotion? And what would it look like to finally stop choosing it? That's when the contract begins to loosen, not because the external changed, but because the frequency no longer fits. You're no longer a match for the pain, you're a match for truth. And when truth becomes your baseline, contracts collapse. The soul contract is not fate carved in stone. It's a map, a blueprint, a sacred draft written in light, meant to evolve as you evolve. You came here with agreements, but you also came here with amnesia. And the moment you begin to remember, everything starts to shift. You realize not every person is meant to stay. Not every pattern needs repeating. Not every story you inherited deserves to be lived out again. And perhaps most importantly, not every lesson requires suffering. You're allowed to graduate. You're allowed to close the chapter without another breakdown. You're allowed to outgrow your role in someone else's drama without guilt. Because honoring the contract doesn't mean staying stuck. It means learning the lesson and moving forward with wisdom. So what now? You pause, you breathe, you reflect, you ask, what patterns am I done with? What soul agreements feel expired? And what would it feel like to write a new contract? Because you can. The ink is vibration, the pen is presence, and the page is this moment. Right here, right now. You are the author. You are the voice that says, I remember, and I choose something new. This doesn't erase the past. It honors it. Because every role, every pain, every mirror brought you here, to this clarity, to this choice, to this remembering. So if something in this journey stirred you, if a memory surfaced, or a pattern cracked, or a truth finally felt like yours, comment below. Say what moved you. Say what ends today. Because your words won't just free you. They'll echo through others who are still caught in their script. And if you're ready to remember even more, subscribe. The contract you came here to live might not be the one you leave with, but that too was part of the plan.